"You'll stay late again tonight," he said with that same smirk. "Or should I remind you what happens if you don't cooperate? I'm Arielle Knox," and that smirk nearly ruined my life. But it also became the reason I now sit in his office, behind his desk, with his title on my door. The air at Apex Marketing didn't smell like success. It smelled like expensive cologne and the ozone of a dozen printers running overtime. At 24, I walked into the glass tower with a degree in one hand and a naive belief in the employee handbook in the other. I was a junior strategist, and Logan Trent was my gateway to the industry. He was 38, charismatic, and possessed a smile that never quite reached his eyes. A smile I'd later learn was a predator's warning. By day 4, the dream collapsed. In a silent conference room, Logan didn't ask about my campaign data. He asked for a private dinner. When I said no, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I went to HR, expecting a shield, but found a wall. Patricia Wells didn't see a victim. She saw a threat to a valuable asset. I left her office realizing I was alone in a den of wolves. But wolves don't expect their prey to start a file. That was the day I stopped being a victim and started becoming a witness. I am about to take you into the world of corporate revenge. But before that, if you've watched any of my stories, I want to say thank you for trusting my stories, and if you haven't subscribed yet, trust me, I am not upset. But if, by the end of this story, one moment stays with you longer than it should, please tap the subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because stories like this, they don't just entertain, they linger. All right, let me show you how everything unfolded. I stepped off the elevator into a cathedral of ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a conquest already won, and the open-plan office buzzed with the kind of energy that makes you forget to eat lunch. Apex Marketing Group didn't just sell campaigns. It sold the fantasy that you were part of something bigger than yourself. And for exactly 3 days, I believed it. Logan Trent found me before I'd even located my desk. He appeared with 2 coffees, one black, one with cream and sugar, and an uncanny ability to guess which was mine. "Arielle Knox," he said, extending the sweet one. "I pulled your portfolio from the interview files. That rebrand concept for the nonprofit? Brilliant. Wasted on charity work, but brilliant. I should have heard the warning in that sentence. Instead, I heard validation." He walked me through the maze of desks, introducing me as my new strategist to people whose names I immediately forgot. His hand hovered at the small of my back, not quite touching, but close enough that I felt its heat through my blouse. I told myself it was just crowded, that I was being sensitive, that this was what mentorship looked like in the real world. "You'll report directly to me," Logan explained as we reached a glass-walled office overlooking the bullpen. His office. His kingdom. I don't waste time on the usual junior grunt work. "You're here because I see potential." He leaned against his desk, arms crossed, assessing me with the focus of someone appraising an acquisition. "Stick with me, and you'll skip 5 years of ladder climbing." The other junior strategists watched us through the glass. I caught a blonde woman, Emma maybe, staring with an expression I couldn't read. Pity, jealousy. I smiled back at Logan, mistaking the trap for a door. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he said. The way he said it should have felt like confidence. It felt like ownership. The conference room on Thursday afternoon was empty except for the 2 of us. Logan had called me in to discuss the Hartwell pitch, but the presentation file he'd mentioned never appeared on the screen. Instead, he sat on the edge of the table, too close, his cologne sharp enough to taste. "You've been doing exceptional work this week," he said. "I think we should celebrate. There's a French place downtown, intimate, quiet. We could discuss your career trajectory over dinner." The phrasing was careful, clinical. but his eyes weren't. "That's really kind," I said, forcing my voice steady, "but I have plans tonight. Maybe we could do a team lunch instead." The temperature in the room shifted. Not dramatically, Logan was too controlled for that. But the warmth in his expression cooled to something polished and blank, like a mask clicking into place. "Plans," he repeated. "Of course." He stood, smoothing his tie. "Well, when you're serious about advancing here, let me know. Opportunities like this don't come around twice." I left the conference room with my portfolio clutched to my chest like armor. By Monday, the special treatment evaporated. Logan stopped by my desk exactly once to drop a stack of expense reports that needed reconciling by end of day. Work that belonged to the finance intern. When I looked up, confused, he was already walking away. At the afternoon strategy meeting, I presented the social media analytics I'd spent the weekend perfecting. Logan listened with his arms crossed, then turned to the room. "Arielle, this is surface-level thinking. I expected deeper analysis from someone on my team. Emma, the blonde strategist, wouldn't meet my eyes." That night, I updated my resume, telling myself I'd overreacted, that I was being paranoid. I deleted it the next morning, telling myself I could handle this. I was wrong about that, too. Patricia Wells's office smelled like lavender and lies. She was 50-something with a helmet of silver hair and a smile that belonged on a customer service training video. I sat across from her desk on Tuesday morning, my hands folded to hide their shaking. "I appreciate you coming to me," Patricia said, her tone suggesting she didn't appreciate it at all. "HR is always here to listen." I told her everything. The dinner invitation, the sudden shift in Logan's treatment, the impossible workloads and public humiliation. I kept my voice professional, reciting facts like evidence in a trial I was certain I'd win. Patricia took notes on a yellow legal pad, nodding at intervals. When I finished, she set down her pen with the deliberate care of someone defusing a bomb. "Arielle, I hear that you're feeling overwhelmed. Starting a new job is stressful, and sometimes we can misinterpret professional feedback as personal." She leaned forward, her expression dripping with concern. "Logan Trent is one of our most valuable assets. He's demanding, yes, but that's because he pushes people to excel. Have you considered that maybe he's challenging you because he sees your potential?" The words landed like a slap, dressed up as a compliment. "He asked me to dinner," I said again, slower this time. "And when I said no, everything changed." Patricia's smile thinned. "Did he say anything explicitly inappropriate? Did he threaten you? Touch you?" "No, but—" "Then what we have here is a personality conflict, not a harassment issue." She closed her notepad. "My advice, focus on your performance. Prove yourself through your work. Logan responds to results." I left her office understanding the truth. HR wasn't a shield. It was a moat protecting the castle, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. I was alone in the den of wolves, and the wolves were just getting started. Logan's retaliation was an art form. He never yelled, never left bruises you could photograph. Instead, he dismantled me with the precision of someone who'd done this before. The assignment started small. "Arielle, grab me a coffee. Black, 2 sugars," in front of the entire strategy team. When I returned, he'd take 1 sip and set it aside. "Too cold. Can you remake it?" Then came the workload. Friday at 5:47 p.m., he'd email me a time-sensitive deck that needed a complete overhaul by Monday morning. The kind of project that required 3 people in a week. I'd spend my weekend cross-eyed at my laptop, submit it Sunday night, and watch him present it Tuesday without crediting my name. In meetings, he'd ask my opinion, then cut me off mid-sentence. "Let's hear from someone with more experience." The other strategists would stare at their laptops, grateful the predator had chosen different prey. He started CCING senior leadership on minor mistakes. A typo in an internal email became a referendum on my attention to detail. A client call that ran 5 minutes over became evidence of my time management issues. The worst part wasn't the tasks, it was the gaslighting. When I pushed back, even gently, Logan would cock his head with theatrical confusion. "I'm trying to develop you, Arielle. Most juniors would kill for this kind of hands-on mentorship. Are you saying you don't want to learn?" I lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. My apartment became a graveyard of takeout containers and cold coffee. I'd wake at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, checking my phone for emails that felt like landmines. Emma cornered me in the bathroom one afternoon. "Just quit," she whispered. "He did this to the last girl, too. HR won't help. No one will." But quitting felt like letting him win. So I bought a voice recorder instead. The voice recorder cost $37 on Amazon. Small enough to fit in my blazer pocket, sensitive enough to catch a whisper across a conference table. I named it Insurance in my head and started treating documentation like a second religion. Every interaction with Logan became a transaction I could bank. When he leaned over my desk to review my work, his hand brushing my shoulder, I'd note the date, time, and witnesses in a password-protected file. When he sent emails at midnight demanding I reconsider my priorities, I'd screenshot them, export the metadata, and store them in 3 separate cloud accounts. I became clinical, methodical, a scientist observing her own destruction. "Arielle, stay behind," he'd say after team meetings, and I'd feel my recorder's weight against my ribs like a talisman. He'd close the door and stand too close, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I could make your career here, or I could make it disappear. Your choice." I'd smile, nod, say, "I understand," and I'd save the file as 2024-03-15_thread_conference_room_b.mp3. The process was exhausting in a different way than the tasks. It required me to stay calm when my hands wanted to shake, to keep my face neutral when my stomach twisted, to become a witness to my own harassment instead of just a victim of it. I bought a second notebook, physical, not digital, and logged every incident. The accidental touches in the elevator, the comments about my clothes being distracting, the times he'd schedule one-on-one meetings at 7 p.m. when the office was nearly empty. Emma noticed the change. "You're still here," she said, surprised. "I'm building a case," I replied. She looked at me like I was naive, like she'd seen this story before and knew how it ended. She was wrong about the ending. I didn't plan to work until midnight. But Logan's latest urgent project had a deadline that only existed to punish me, so there I was on a Wednesday in late March, alone on the 42nd floor with nothing but the hum of the HVAC and my own exhaustion. The elevator chimed at 11:47 p.m. Dorian Vale stepped out. I'd seen the CEO exactly twice, once during my interview and once in a company-wide video about quarterly earnings. He was 50-something, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. He stopped when he saw me, genuine surprise crossing his face. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked. I should have smiled, should have said something about dedication or loving the work. Instead, 3 months of documentation and fear cracked something open inside me. "I'm here because my manager assigns projects at 6 p.m. that are due the next morning," I said. "I'm here because when I reported harassment to HR, I was told I was misinterpreting mentorship. I'm here because if I don't do this work, I'll be fired for poor performance, and if I do it, I'll be invisible anyway." The words spilled out like a confession, like testimony, Dorian's expression shifted from polite curiosity to something harder. Who's your manager? Logan Trent. A pause. Come to my office. We sat across from each other in a space that smelled like leather and old money. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Tell me everything. And if you have documentation, I want to see it. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd labeled evidence. 3 months of recordings, emails, photographs, timestamps, and witness notes. I have 73 documented incidents, I said. Would you like them in chronological order or by severity? Dorian Vale leaned forward. Send me everything, he said. Tonight! I hit send at 12:14 a.m., and the war began. The auditors arrived on a Monday with the subtlety of a SWAT team. 2 women and a man in matching navy suits, carrying briefcases that looked expensive enough to contain state secrets. They set up in the executive conference room, the one with frosted glass that turned everyone inside into anonymous silhouettes. No one told us why they were there, but everyone knew something had shifted. Logan's swagger dimmed by exactly 10%. He still gave orders, still held court in meetings, but there was a new quality to his movements, a wariness, like a wolf catching the scent of a trap he couldn't see. Does anyone know what this is about? He asked during our Thursday morning stand-up, his tone aggressively casual. Silence. I kept my eyes on my laptop, typing notes I didn't need. The auditors interviewed people in alphabetical order. When they called Emma Cortez, she came back white-faced and wouldn't look at anyone. Marcus Chun returned subdued. By the time they'd worked through half the department, the office felt like a pressure cooker with a faulty seal. Logan started watching me. Not obviously, he was too smart for that. But I'd catch him staring through the glass wall of his office, his expression calculating. He'd never asked if I'd spoken to anyone, never directly accused me, but the weight of his attention was its own threat. On Friday, he stopped by my desk with a stack of files. I need you to reorganize the client archive, he said pleasantly. Should take you through the weekend. It was busy work. Punishment disguised as productivity. Of course, I said, smiling. That afternoon, one of the auditors, the younger woman with sharp eyes, approached me in the break room. She didn't introduce herself, just handed me a business card. If you remember anything else, she said quietly, call me directly. Logan was standing 15 feet away. He'd seen everything, and he still didn't know I was the one who'd burned his kingdom down. The manila envelope appeared on my desk Tuesday morning while I was in the bathroom. No label, no note, just sitting there among my client folders like it had always belonged. I opened it without thinking. Inside were printed emails marked confidential, executive eyes only, salary information, acquisition strategies, communications between Dorian Vale and the board about a merger no one outside the C-suite should know existed. My blood went cold. This wasn't an accident. This was a setup. I was still staring at the documents when Logan appeared at my cubicle, Patricia Wells trailing behind him like a shadow. His expression was pure theatrical concern. Arielle, we need to talk, he said loudly enough for nearby desks to hear. There's been a serious breach of confidential information, and we have reason to believe. Don't touch anything. Dorian Vale's voice cut through the office like a blade. He was walking toward us with 2 of the auditors, his face carved from ice. Logan's performance faltered. Dorian, I was just... Step away from her desk. Now. The CEO turned to me. Ms. Knox, did you open that envelope? Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It was on my desk when I returned from the restroom 3 minutes ago. I haven't touched the documents inside. One of the auditors pulled on latex gloves and carefully removed the envelope. No filing marks, No routing stamps. These were printed today. She looked at Logan. From your office printer. We pulled the logs an hour ago. The color drained from Logan's face. Patricia tried to intervene. There must be some mistake. The mistake, Dorian said quietly, was thinking I wouldn't notice when you both tried to bury this investigation. He turned to me. Ms. Knox, please come with me. You're not in trouble. Logan's expression as I walked away was pure venom. He knew he'd lost, but he wasn't done yet. Logan was fired on a Thursday. Security escorted him out at 3 p.m. with a banker's box and a severance agreement that included an NDA he'd never honor. I watched from my desk as he walked past, his jaw clenched, his eyes finding mine for one brief, venomous second. I should have felt safe. I stayed late that night finishing a presentation, trying to convince myself the nightmare was over. The parking garage was nearly empty when I finally left at 8 p.m., my heels echoing off concrete in a rhythm that felt too loud. He was waiting by my car. Logan Trent, no longer employed, no longer bound by corporate consequences, leaning against my driver's side door like he had every right to be there. My hand found my phone, found the record button. We need to talk, he said, his voice low and controlled in a way that was worse than shouting. I don't think that's appropriate. I kept 3 car widths between us, my keys threaded through my knuckles like a weapon. You destroyed my career. He pushed off the car, taking 1 step forward. 15 years I built at that company. And you, some entitled little girl who couldn't handle real mentorship, you ruined everything. I documented harassment. There's a difference. You recorded private conversations. Another step. You manipulated the CEO. You cost me everything. My job, my reputation, my future. Do you understand what you've done? His hand moved to his pocket. I didn't wait to see what he'd pull out. If you come any closer, I'm calling 911. This conversation is being recorded. You're on private property. You're threatening me. Logan froze. His eyes dropped to my phone, screen lit, recording icon visible. You're still fucking documenting, he said, almost laughing. You really think that'll save you? It already has, I said, and I watched him realize, finally, that he just committed a crime on tape. They arrested Logan Trent for criminal harassment and stalking 2 days after the parking garage incident. The restraining order came through by the end of the week. Patricia Wells resigned quietly, taking a severance package that included her own silence. Dorian Vale called me into his office on a Monday morning 6 weeks after the auditors had first arrived. We've completed the investigation, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. We found 4 other women who experienced similar patterns with Logan. None of them reported it because they'd watched HR bury complaints before. I thought of Emma's warning in the bathroom. They were protecting him. They were protecting the company's liability. There's a difference, and it's one we're going to fix. He leaned back in his chair. We're creating a new position, Director of Strategic Culture. Someone who reports directly to me, bypasses HR entirely, and has the authority to investigate and address workplace conduct issues before they become lawsuits. He paused. I'd like you to take it. I stared at him. I'm 24. I've been here 4 months. You've been here long enough to know exactly what's broken. And you had the courage to document it when everyone else stayed silent. His expression softened. You earned this, Ms. Knox. Not because of what happened to you, but because of what you did about it. 3 weeks later, I sat in what used to be Logan's office. They'd renovated it. New furniture, new paint, the predatory energy exorcised. My name was on the door in clean, simple letters. The staff meeting was packed. I stood at the front of the conference room and presented the new policies, mandatory third-party reporting systems, regular culture audits, zero-tolerance enforcement with teeth. Someone asked if this was because of what happened. This is because of what's not going to happen again, I said. I looked around the room at faces I'd learned to read. The skeptics, the believers, the ones still deciding whether to trust this. I'm not here to be your friend, I continued. I'm here to make sure that when you walk into this building, you can do your job without fear. That's not a privilege. That's the baseline. Emma caught my eye from the back row. She nodded once. I'd stopped being prey the day I bought a voice recorder. Today, I became the person who made sure no one else had to. If you made it to the end, or even watched part of a story, thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, feel free to like, subscribe, or share your own experience in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.